And we are happy to be joined by NHL Deputy Commissioner Bill Daly. Thanks for joining us, Bill.
My pleasure, guys. Happy to be here.
And I think we'll start it off with, we all saw the emotional ceremony that they had in Toronto for Börje Salming. And you just came back from Sweden. You were there last week. They had the 100th anniversary of the Swedish Ice Hockey Federation, and you were able to present Börje with the NHL Honorary Award. Can you just talk about that and what that moment was like for you?
Yeah, it was a pretty emotional experience, similar to what happened at Scotiabank on the weekend, Friday and Saturday night. The Swedish anniversary was 100 years, and they had about 900 kind of dignitaries on the floor for a gala dinner, and then let the public in and filled the lower bowl. So there was probably about 4,000 people in the building. And Börje was there with his wife and family, his two daughters and two sons, came out and accepted the award. And there was a rousing standing ovation. A lot of motion in the building. It was quite the moment. I was obviously thrilled to be a part of it.
Bill, last June you got to actually hand out the Stanley Cup, which I think is the first time in your life. And I was staring at it during that, and I was thinking you could see the pride on your face being able to do that. And then you get to go to these Hall of Fame induction ceremonies, and you get to see so much in your role as Deputy Commissioner, National Hockey League. What is it like when you go to these big events compared to just the nitty gritty that none of us get to see behind the scenes of when, you're negotiating contracts and CBAs and all the stuff that sometimes creates unbelievable stress in your life?
Well, there are obviously a lot of perks involved in my job, which I certainly appreciate and are very cognizant of. And that's, going to games, meeting great people who are in this sport, and doing fun things that I love doing. So all of that is very gratifying at the end of the day. But as you say, Mike, there's a lot of other aspects of my job a little more taxing, and they probably take up the bulk of my time.
Bill, speaking of big events that people are looking forward to is the World Cup, and I know fans and players alike. Kind of while we're waiting on that front, I know it's been delayed a year. There's been an idea floated on Hockey Night in Canada regarding a Canada-U.S. series, maybe bringing the women to maybe since September or so. Are there some alternatives maybe you guys can explore as a league to get that best on best in some other way that either U.S. and Canada can be part of?
Well, I mean, we've given some thought over time. We and the Players Association both have brainstormed over time with respect to various competition formats that we might be able to roll out in different scenarios. Part of I just read about the one that was proposed over the weekend. My concern with a competition format like that is it's somewhat exclusionary to 30% of our player base, in the sense that probably 70% of our player base is U.S. or Canadian born, but there's still a 30% that are not, and I certainly wouldn't want to be in a competition format that excludes those great players and those great countries who participate in the National Hockey League every night and help make us great.
I've heard some of the players mention how disappointing it is. Everyone understands why we aren't having the World Cup of Hockey, and I don't think anybody's arguing that we should under the current conditions. But I guess what's the reaction been like for you guys? Have players? I guess have you felt how disappointed players are, and then does it kind of make you excited for maybe how excited players will be when you can eventually do something like that? Do you feel like there's a real excitement around the players for eventually when it does happen?
Well, certainly we know, we're very interested, and we know our players are very interested in getting back to best on best international competition at the earliest possible date. That includes World Cups, but it also includes Olympic participation. We know there's a sense of disappointment. Certainly, we're disappointed that we're not able to roll forward with the World Cup on the original schedule. But to their credit, the players felt like, similar to what I said before, that if the Russian players in our league can't participate, that it's not a tournament that they want to participate in, and that's real credit to them, thinking big picture and world view, and we certainly share that view. We hope we can turn the page on the conflict sooner rather than later. Obviously, a lot of unknowns and uncertainties, and don't know when that will be. But as soon as we are able, we'll certainly be ready to fire this up.
Bill, I was just thinking about how it was at the GM's meetings in March, night before it ended, that Eugene Melnyk passed away, the longtime owner of the Ottawa Senators. What is the latest with the Ottawa Senators situation? Obviously, they've been in the news a lot lately, and Ryan Reynolds, it seems like, wants to be part of a group that could bring new ownership to the Senators. What is the latest there? Have you actually been in contact with Ryan Reynolds?
The answer is yes. We have been in contact with Ryan. He's an incredibly cool guy, very insightful, very passionate, very enthusiastic. Is a big lover of hockey and NHL hockey in particular. And I certainly hope and think it would be great if he could be a participant in a winning bidder for Ottawa. With respect to the process more broadly, it's really just starting. Galliano Sports Partners is running the process. A retained third-party expert who's done a lot of these sales. They'll proceed in a very professional way. The one thing that Melnyk girls made clear, Eugene's daughters made clear, is that they want this franchise to be successful in Ottawa and to operate and play in Ottawa. And that would be one of the ground rules that we're working under. But other than that, they've basically just opened the doors, and I guess the gratifying part there seems to be a lot of interest early on here, and obviously that speaks to the Senators, but I think it speaks to the vibrancy of NHL hockey as well. So we'll see where the process goes, but we got a ways in front of us.
Bill, obviously, the Bruins took some criticism, for their decision to sign Mitchell Miller, maybe the lack of due diligence on their part in the family, and they'd be reaching out to you guys at least beforehand too. Do you guys say anything at the GM meetings, a message to the group on maybe how to handle it these kind of things going forward? And what was the lesson you think people should take away from this, from a league perspective or a team perspective, when going through these types of signings?
Well, I don't think we addressed the Mitchell Miller situation specifically. But we did make the managers aware that obviously we're here, and in situations where there's any concern or hesitancy or potential questions with respect to a particular signing or player acquisition, we're happy to be a sounding board and a resource. Obviously that people, or clubs and personnel at clubs should be focused on those issues and certainly be free and willing to reach out to us.
Bill, one of the biggest business, I guess, issues this season, talk around the NHL has been the Arizona Coyotes arena. There was a lot of optimism from you and from Gary before the season about how maybe this would be this situation that they found themselves in would be there were some positives to it. Now that we've seen a few games in there, how are things from your perspective, and is there any update on a potential new arena for the Coyotes?
Yeah, I think the reviews of the Mullet Arena have been very, very positive, both from the teams, the visiting teams that have played there, the players that have played there. I understand that the ice conditions are great. The intimacy of the facility is great. The fans on top of the action, and quite frankly, having a full building and generating even more revenue than they were generating in their old building are all positives. More broadly, obviously, this club needs a new facility. They have plans for that new facility in Tempe. They've received the preliminary approvals they need from the Tempe City Council in terms of supporting that. There are additional hurdles that lay ahead, but hopefully we're all hopeful that those will move quickly and they'll get the assurances that they need in the short term to begin work on that new facility.
Bill, just going back to the Miller situation, what is the next steps from this process? I mean, obviously, he's not eligible to play, at least currently, in the National Hockey League. They've made it attention that they're not going to have him sign. So what are the steps there that Boston needs to do to potentially either terminate his contract or buy him out or whatever?
Well, ultimately, that's a Boston determination, and I certainly wouldn't kind of interfere in their decision-making process. I do know that they're currently evaluating their options and the situation. I don't think they've made any decisions at this point in time, but other than that they don't believe that the player has a future with their club. What they end up doing with respect to the contract and contractual relationship is really up to them.
Bill, I'm sure you've seen what the NBA does this a lot, where they stagger their game times on certain nights where there's a busy slate of schedule. And I was wondering if you guys ever thought of that too, from the NHL perspective, when you have a ton of games on one night, to by 15 minutes or so, kind of stagger them a little bit to get some more time for people who watch them.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we do stagger as a regular practice during our playoff scheduling. We also stagger during the regular season to a certain extent. I think you have to be cognizant of the balancing that staggering comes with, because I think we are focused on the in-market fan experience. And those fan bases have expectations with respect to traditional start times that are sometimes difficult to change, not all the time. So I think you do it, you pick your spots, you do it where it totally makes sense to do. And then where, you want to give a bias toward the hometown fans, you might not do it. So I think it's a balancing act to a certain extent, but we obviously see the value in doing it where it makes sense to do it.
We've spoken to a few GMs about the meetings and how they went, and the decision not to modify the coach's offside review or the puck over the glass. What are your overall thoughts just from the GM meetings, and do you think that those issues are pretty settled, that they're going to stay how they are for now?
Yeah, I believe they are. I mean, I think the reaction, there was a brief discussion in particular on whether there should be a return from a 2-minute penalty to a loss of a timeout on some challenges. I think it was pretty overwhelming that the group felt like the rule should stay the same as it currently is. That there was a reason that the change was made, and the reason has actually proved successful. So I don't think there was a whole lot of support for changing that. With respect to puck over the glass, that's something we've debated for probably 10 years. And the biggest challenge on the puck over the glass is we find that the video replay often doesn't really clarify the situation all that much. There are very few times you'll get a definitive view on video that is any better than the view that the 4-on-ice officials have on top of that play. So instead of introducing something that would certainly delay the game for a small squeeze, perhaps, the thought process is let's not do that.
Bill, obviously the global games are back on. We've seen games in Europe and Asia. There's been lots of reports lately that the league is investigating potentially playing games in Australia. I know one team that would love to be in that type of game. What is the latest with that? And is that something that actually is feasible?
Well, I certainly think it's feasible, for sure. There's been interest in Australia for a number of years now with respect to potentially hosting NHL teams. I think if we were to pursue that, I think we pursue it at least initially on a preseason basis, a portion of training camp, and perhaps 2 exhibition games in Australia. It's an intriguing possibility. I'm certainly not in a position to rule it out. So it may even be more likely than not that it happens. But there's no done deal yet.
And if it does happen, I mean, could you see as early as next season, or are we talking a little time away?
It could be that might be a little aggressive, but certainly I wouldn't rule that out at this point.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Bill. We appreciate you covered pretty much everything here. We hopped around to a bunch of topics, but we always appreciate the time and your insight.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate you having me.
Thanks, Bill.
Awesome.
Thanks, Bill.
Great
Happy Thanksgiving to you.